Ready? Got it. Thanks, Carolyn. I'm going to go ahead and get this meeting underway as people continue to join in and be part of this meeting. So I will call the meeting to order at 6:40 p.m. So thank you again, everybody. And my name is Kathy Gleason. I'm currently acting president and vice president of Turnagain Community Council. So this is our regular November meeting that we're doing this evening. And Zoom etiquette, I know all of you are very familiar with Zoom meetings. So unless anybody has any questions, I'm just going to trust that you will conduct yourselves accordingly. So I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move that we approve the agenda. This is Kathleen.
Okay.
I'll second. Dan
Okay.
Gleason.
There is an additional item that'll be discussed under executive board report. And also I'm just switching things around at Anna Brawley's request, or assembly representative. So I'm going to move her up under right after what's new in Turnagain. Otherwise, everything is the same on the agenda. So I don't think we need to amend it. Those are just more informal kind of notes. So does anybody, is everybody in favor of, is there any dissent about the agenda? I'm not sure how to word that. Any objections to the agenda as presented? If not, I'm going to say our agenda is approved. Okay, so I will start out with announcements. The first one is a pretty big deal, so I'm just going to hold something up that hopefully you guys can all look at and acknowledge that it's my husband's 65th birthday.
Okay.
Okay, so welcome to the 65 and over club, Dan.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
It says a lot for him to be celebrating, quote unquote, celebrating his 65th birthday at a community council meeting. But of course, you know, what would he be doing otherwise, right?
We'll do other things this weekend.
Sounds good. So thank you, Dan. I love you.
The birthday's today, huh?
Yes.
Birthday is today.
All right. Well, you could always sing happy birthday.
If somebody wants to take the lead, that would be fine. If not, we can go ahead and move on.
Can we move on?
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy
Birthday, dear Dan. Happy birthday to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Many
Now that
more.
I'm totally embarrassed by my wife and everybody else. Okay.
It's what I do best, Dan. It's really what I do best. Okay, I'm going to continue on with announcements.
Yeah.
There's a fair amount of them, but they're quick. So tomorrow, you probably all are aware that it's Anchorage Housing Action Week. It has been all week, and tomorrow from 9 to 5, there's a Community Housing Action Summit at UAA Student Union with the guest speaker, Charles Marone, founder of Strong Towns. And I don't have any other information about the speaker, but just wanted to make sure that you guys are aware of it. And then on Saturday, November 4th from 2 to 3:30, also part of Housing Action Week, there's Future City Fun for Families at Mountain View Library. And the kids can have a building themed activity while the parents provide input on the assembly's housing work. So I'm sure if you go to, online, you can find out a lot more information about what's going on with that effort. And Anna may elaborate on that a little bit when she joins us. And tomorrow evening, Saturday and Sunday, Friends of the Library are having their annual fall book sale. They're at Lusac Library. So if you want to partake of that, you'll get some good deals. Just make sure you bring your own bags. If you haven't already got your calendar marked before you go to bed Saturday night, change your clocks, turn them 1 hour back, because we're saying goodbye to daylight savings time and hello to standard time. So when you wake up Sunday, hopefully you will have been able to sleep an hour more before you wake up on Sunday morning. And let's see, the Alaska Common Ground is having a renewable energy legislation in Alaska event on November 9th, Thursday, November 9th from 6 to 7 at King Street Brewing Company. So if you want more information about that, you could go on the Alaska Common Ground website. And let's see, also on November 9th, from 5:30 to 7:30, there is an Anchorage Opioid Task Force Town Hall meeting at the Weldon Marsta Theater. So those are all the announcements that I have. We'll just put this up one more time for Dan's sake. That was the biggest announcement. Does anybody else have any announcements that they would like to share? If not, then we will move on. So what's new in Turnagain is the next item on the agenda. And we started doing this a little while back last year for just 5 minutes. If anybody wants to just share anything that may be happening, either good or bad, going on in our neighborhood these days. So does anybody have anything they'd like to share? Carolyn, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody who came out to Trick or Treat Fish Creek on Tuesday for Halloween. There were a lot of folks out there, lots of kids, lots of neighbors, and it was a really great time just being able to see that wonderful community space between the three parks, Fish Creek Park, Woodland Park, and Barber Street Park, and all along the Fish Creek Trail to see that public space activated. So thank you to everybody who came out. It was a really great event. Thank you.
Okay, great. And it wasn't too cold or anything for the kids. Anybody else would like to share anything going on? Jean.
I just would like to, in the participant list, could people please put if they're members or identify themselves? There's several people that are just have their single name.
I appreciate that, Jean. That's a great request. Yeah, that way we know if you're, when it comes time to voting on a few things, we know if you're a member or a guest, and we know for the record who all is attending. That would be great. Thank you. I appreciate that, Jean. Anything else? I don't see anybody else raising their hand, so we will move on. And Anna, I see that you have joined us, so I've already informed everybody that I'm moving you up on the agenda to accommodate your scheduling. So Anna, you have the screen right now. If you could give your assembly report, we'd appreciate it.
You know, I think she just dropped off, Kathy. Oh, wait, she just, no, she's here. I'm admitting her now. She has bounced in and out a couple times. Maybe she's having.
There she is. Anna, I just kind of introduced you and said that you'd be, we were accommodating you with just a little bit of movement on our schedule. So go ahead and feel free to give your assembly report now.
Oh yeah, thank you. And sorry for jumping in and out. I was trying to have a fixed audio issue. And I'm outside at the moment because I'm at an event. So I appreciate you making time. So I'll give some brief updates, and then I can also make time for questions. But I want to highlight a few things. First, is that we're working through our budget. So we had our first public hearing on the city budget at our last meeting, October 24th. And then we'll have our second public hearing on Tuesday, November 7th, next Tuesday at our meeting. And then we're working toward our usual schedule of approval, which is Tuesday, the November 21st. So I encourage folks to look at that. So the mayor has put out the draft budget. We're working on amendments. You know, one of the things we're really concerned about, of course, is vacancies at the city and wanting to be making sure that the municipality is a competitive employer. So we're really taking a look at, you know, if there's any opportunity for wage increases, you know, both our for example, the city, I think a year ago, increased our muni attorney salaries, which has helped with recruitment, but we didn't do that across other departments. So really looking at looking across the board, also making sure that we have adequate funding for snow plowing and other kind of core services, and of course addressing our needs around homelessness, continuing to focus on housing, and really just maintaining, as I said, that core level of service. So you might have seen that the mayor's budget proposes a cut, and there's some kind of modest cuts in this year. But of course, those of you who know anything about the tax cap, you know, we always want to think about future years as well, because if we reduce the budget in year one, year two, that's the budget we start with, right? So it never goes back up. It always goes back down. And so we're really looking at not leaving critical funding on the table for things that we know we need. And I know I've heard from folks in Turnagain and other neighborhoods a lot of challenges or frustration around kind of feeling like we have less level of service. I know that came out with snow plowing, park maintenance, all those things. So we're really looking to hold the line, make sure that we're still investing in our community, and then that we're really making room for those critical services that we need. So I would encourage folks to engage in that. The other thing I'll mention as far as the budget is the capital budget. So our, you know, the way we pay for departments and things is our operating budget. Our capital budget is something always of interest to councils, because that's where our capital improvement projects go. Whether it goes on the bond or a state request, certainly not seeing a lot of money out of the state these days, but really looking ahead to what voters will approve in April. And that includes our park projects, road projects, other facilities. And so that's another one that I'm looking at, making sure that we have our same West Anchorage priorities in that bond package, and making sure that we're advocating for that. So I also encourage folks to take a look at what's in there. To some extent, there's some time, because what we approve at the end of January is what actually goes on the ballot, but it's all part of the budgeting process as well. So that's on the budget. And then while I'm on the subject of bonds, I'll bring up another item that I'm excited to be co-sponsoring, which is a public restroom bond. So you may have seen in the news, we're proposing purchase of between about 20 and 30 public restrooms. So these would be standalone units. One vendor that provides units like this is called the Portland Loo. And the Portland Loo is really a very durable type of restroom. It's designed to be safe. It's designed to have visibility, so you can tell if someone's in there. You can't obviously see somebody doing their business in there, but you can make sure that you can see if it's occupied. It has blue lighting. And so, you know, unfortunately we have an issue with drug use, injecting drug use. And so you can't see your veins with that type of lighting. And it's really vandal resistant and graffiti resistant. And I'll just mention that I know some folks had sticker shock with the bond. So it's $12.5 million. The reason why it's high is one, because those restrooms are very durable. They're not like a porta potty made of plastic. But also what's built into that cost is 20 years of operations and maintenance. So really, if you think about buying a new car, you know, you don't necessarily pay for all of the maintenance that you need for that car for the next 20 years in that car loan. So we're trying to do it differently that way and make sure that we're caring for that need for maintenance over time. And so so the way that the pricing works out, a part of that cost per unit is purchasing, shipping it up here, installing it. And then the other part of it is really all of that kind of cleaning, repairs, all the things that it would need for those next 20 years. And that would be a responsibility of the Parks Department. So that's something that, again, is not necessarily on the bond yet for next year. It would be a standalone item, but we have a public hearing on it also on Tuesday, November 7th. and really wanting to hear from folks. Is this the right way to go? We've heard from a lot of folks, from older people with bladder issues, parents of young kids. If you've ever tried to find a bathroom and your kid really has to go, it's hard. And then, of course, that's something that we usually put on our businesses, like downtown. You've probably noticed more and more businesses, you have to ask for a key, there's a code. We're really putting all of that responsibility for what is a public issue on some of our businesses downtown. So that's another one to be looking at. So the next step would be that if it gets voted to be put on the ballot, the assembly has to approve that. But what they're approving is so that it goes to the voters to decide. So it's similar to, any other bond that we put forward. So that's really what we're working on. I guess there I'll just pause to see if folks have questions, because I know there's always a lot going on. And then I'll do a quick plug for our housing summit, but I'll do it after the questions.
I see that Pat Redmond has her hand, and then Sarah Haley.
Okay, two things, Anna. One, I think we don't need to panic regarding housing. I have access, well, we all have access to newspapers from around the country. And in my the state that I was born in, and the areas that I was raised in before I came to Alaska, it's the same thing. The big headline this week was housing shortage. Where do we buy? Where can people afford to buy houses? What areas of, what's left out there? What is the market? It's they could have taken the same words right out of the Anchorage Daily News. And the other was, I did look up Portland, Lou, and I did contact them, and it's most interesting. They are, I appreciate the effort there, because I know that is something that we need to look into. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. Sarah.
Yeah, hi, Anna. Did you guys talk about charging for use of the restrooms, and can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we didn't specifically talk about that. Obviously, if this is approved, there's a lot of, questions that would still need to be figured out, like locations and where exactly, how often to clean them. I believe I'll need to check their website. I don't know if I would assume that they have a way to charge for restrooms. I know that is common in Europe, for example. I know one problem that was brought up at another meeting I was at about charging is, well, I don't really carry coins anymore. So that would be kind of the conversation too of how do we do that? And then, of course, if you're a mom, you're trying to fumble through your pockets as your kid's pulling on your coat and saying, hey, I really have to go, and they're about to pee their pants. So I think there's a lot of good conversation there. And like I said, I think there's pros and cons to requiring that payment.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Let's see. I think something went through my brain when you were talking about the bonds. With the capital budget, unfortunately, Dan and I are going to be out of town next Tuesday, so I won't be testifying. But any of the top 5 items in our CIP list, take a close look at, Anna, and see if you can do anything about trying to get some funding for one or more of those.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so I was looking at the CIP list. I actually now have an assembly aide, which is exciting. So that's somebody who's it's very part-time. We don't have a lot of funding for staff, and we don't have full-time staffers. But that is actually something I asked him to do this afternoon, is to look at the capital budget proposed for this year, to look at last year's, because of course, there's a 6-year kind of rolling list of projects, and they could move up or down depending on, priorities. And then also looking at every single council in this district's priorities. And so that's certainly on my mind. And I want to make sure, one, that all the projects that we want are on there. And then if there aren't projects on there, if there's an opportunity to do that. And then also the CIP list generally has been a conversation of the assembly, recognizing that the system is hard to use. Not every community council participates. And then it feels like there's a disconnect between what people say they want in the community and then whether it ends up on the bond or not. And so we're really looking at that process. And so I think if there's a project that we can't move forward this year, I really want to work it from the beginning and say, how do you get that on the list? How do you get it into the queue? And because I know there's a couple in our area that that are like that, like the Northern Lights Drainage Project. And then really just figuring out, is it state money? Is it local money? You know, who do you even ask for money, right? And so those are things I want to untangle. So if we can't get it done on this bond, that's something we're all trying to figure out, because I think we realize there's issues.
Okay, but just FYI, we decided last year to take that off our list. That particular project is not a priority for us anymore because the work that
okay.
they did pretty well fixed the problem.
Okay.
So yeah, set that one aside and just, take a look at our list that we approved this year and maybe go from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification, because I know
Yeah.
there's other ones that we keep trying to get on the list and then haven't gone. So
Yeah. But thanks. Okay, John, I see you have your hand raised.
Okay, thanks. Anna, looking at your newsletter from you and Felix, you mentioned there's a draft housing action plan out for comment, and I've sort of downloaded that. Is there a comment deadline that you have you'd like to get comments in by?
so yeah, let me touch on that because it relates to the housing summit as well. So I'll come back to answering that.
Great.
So we're in the middle of Housing Action Week, and that is a week that the Assembly designated, and we've been hosting events all over town. Either we're hosting or we're having partners hosting. The big event tomorrow, so I want to make sure everybody knows, 9 a.m. to about 4, I think it's advertised till 5, but we're going to end around 4, is the Anchorage Housing Summit. And so part of that is really, sharing back things we have been doing, sharing some information about the problem, but also really unveiling the first draft of that plan. So we want to talk about what the goals are, what the strategies we're going to be pursuing, and really kind of what's in the Assembly or the Muni's ability to change, right? So we know interest rates went up. We're not a bank. We're not going to go make the bank change our interest rates, but there are things we can do with our zoning code, with public infrastructure investment, things like that. And so, so back to the plan, we're really bringing that plan to the community at that meeting. We don't have a set comment deadline because that's kind of the first time that we're rolling it out. And it's a living document. So we're not saying this is the plan, live with it, right? Where we want input. We really want to talk about those actions. And we've got a really great set of case studies that we're going to work through in our breakouts in the afternoon to kind of unpack with real world examples in Anchorage, what are all the different issues that affect housing, this big complex system of housing we have. And so the comment deadline isn't set, but I'll say that we're really aiming to approve the plan next month in December, probably not till mid-December, because we also want to have a work session on it. We're kind of we've been working through the process, but we're not, we're not just rushing to get it done in our next meeting. And so I'd say if you can get us comments by the end of November, or maybe even before Thanksgiving, just to give a little bit extra time, then we'll get a more specific comment deadline out soon. But I think it's not something that's right now tied to something on our, sorry, there's a plane. I'll just wait for a second. It's not something that's tied to an item on the agenda. We are going to move it through and formally adopt it at some point, but there is time to weigh in. So yeah, I'd say definitely by the end of the month.
Okay, great. And then sort of one other related question, as the ordinance to reduce the number of residential zoning district to 5 moves forward, if there are any subcommittees or any focus groups or anything that's going to be going on prior to this going formally before the planning commission, I know I'd be interested in attending one and making sure there's community council representation. Okay.
Yeah, that's good feedback. And I know you had emailed about that. So I think because we are running up against the holidays and of course budget and other things. So I think and we're still kind of talking with the planning department about what that looks like, because it does need to go to planning and zoning commission before it goes back to the assembly, with, following that process. So yeah, we'll definitely be in touch about how to stay involved in that.
Great.
Okay, well, Anna, if you want to close with any other comments, and then we probably should be moving on with our agenda.
Yeah, I'll just share. Sorry, there's a train moving. I'm sitting in the Ship Creek area. I would just say, you mentioned the newsletter. If you haven't been able to sign up for that, I just sent out the first issue. I sent Kathy the link to the sign up. And so if Kathy, maybe you could circulate that, because I'm not really in a place to copy paste it. But I'm going to be doing a monthly newsletter. And so please feel free to sign up. I'll put it in my email signature as well. So if you get an email from me, you'll see it there. Or just email my direct contact. I'll put it in the chat. And so that's a good way to stay involved. And as I said, we're moving through our budget process. There's always a lot going on. So please stay involved, email me, email all assembly members if you have a comment. And yeah, hopefully you have a good rest of the month and a good Thanksgiving.
Okay, thank you very much, Anna. I appreciate it. I'll continue to see if I can find that email and post that in the chat room as the meeting progresses. So thank you so much, Anna, for all your work. Okay, so now we'll move on to the executive board report. And let's see here. So our next board meeting, well, when we met last week, we did not come up with a date for December for our board meeting. We didn't discuss that. So we'll have to figure that out. And if anybody is interested in knowing that date, please don't hesitate to contact me so I know that you can, that I can let you know when it is. So here we are in November, but we have been announcing it every month this year under our executive board report. We still don't have a president or a secretary for 2023, but later on we will be having our 2024 elections. And so, we're about ready to close out this year. And Carolyn, would you like to give the Federation of Community Councils delegate report now, please?
Sure, happy to. So the let me pull up my notes here. So the FCC held their delegates meeting on October 18th at 6 o'clock at the BP Energy Center. And we had a couple of presentations. One presentation was by Nolan Clouda called The Upside Down Economics of Housing in Anchorage. And it was basically an abbreviated version of a presentation that he shared several times prior to different groups, such as at a previous housing retreat. And it was all about just kind of the state of housing in Anchorage right now, and more kind of like how we got here and the demographics and the economics associated with that. The other presentation that we received was from Project Hope. And Project Hope gave us a training on how to administer naloxone, which was really great. Went through all the steps as far as like how to identify whether somebody is experiencing an overdose, what to do to help support them, the steps to take, and then how to administer naloxone. And they also, as a result of us going through the training, we were able to receive naloxone kits to carry around with us in the event that we come across somebody who is experiencing an overdose, and we can administer naloxone to help them before emergency services personnel arrive on scene. The only other thing I have to report at this point, I think, is that the FCC Executive Board, of which I am a member, we submitted our proposed 2024 budget to the municipality. We are starting to go through that process when it comes to renewing our grant agreement with the municipality, so that we will hopefully have operational funds for 2024, and just kind of the scope of what that looks like and where our budget priorities are. So with that, that is the conclusion of my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn. Did you guys provide any update on hiring a manager for the FCC?
So I am not in charge of that aspect. Amanda Moser, the secretary, is in charge of the transition team, and I believe the application closed last week. And I have not received a recent update as far as how many applications we've received. But my last understanding, this is a couple of weeks old, the information now, but that we received one application. So that, again, that information is a couple weeks old. So I'm hoping to get an update here from Amanda and others, hopefully in the next few days. We were supposed to meet as an executive board today, but we ran into some scheduling issues. So we need to reschedule that executive board meeting, at which point I will have better information to report back.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Carolyn? Okay, if not, we'll continue with our executive board report. So there's an update on Spenard Beach Park, just the improvements that we did in 2022, fall of 2022. And because it was brought to the Anchorage Park Foundation's attention that there was not an ADA bench installed. We did order 2 benches. We did install 2 benches, but apparently they were not considered ADA. So one of them was replaced, and I haven't gone out there to look to see what it looks like. It's not the same style of the benches that we put in previously, but now it's compliant. And so that's just a brief update of the Spenard Beach Park and what's going on out there as far as from our efforts last year to get phase 1 of some improvements done on that. And as far as the Lineary Park public naming panel, we did, I reported at our October meeting that in September, the 4-person panel presented at the Anchorage Parks and Rec Advisory Commission. And they ended up voting to support the naming of the Memorial Garden, the Michelle Byron Memorial Garden, and the 2 Marston Field Diamonds, John Opensky and Bob Durst, but they did not support naming the tennis courts up on the upper level after the Hendrickson family. And so, and their rationale, I'll just remind you, their rationale at that point was they had provided matching funds to rehabilitate the tennis courts several years ago, but it's not kind of a one-time thing because that court will continue to need to be rehabilitated over time. So they didn't feel like it was appropriate to name the courts after that family, but certainly the sign that shows our appreciation for that, that's up there now, will remain up there. And we are now waiting to hear when we will be scheduled to go before the assembly and get final approval for whatever they deem appropriate to get those amenities named at Lineary Park. So we're just have to provide another final packet to them, and Kathy Opensky is doing that for the panel. And now we're just waiting to see where we fit in on the assembly's busy schedule for that. So that is all I have for executive board report. So let's see, Stephanie or Carolyn, do you have anything else for under executive board report? If not, we will move on with our agenda. So now we've already done the assembly report. So I see Senator Matt Clayman has joined us. So welcome, Matt. I'll let you go ahead and jump in and give your legislative report.
Thanks, Kathy. It's great to be here this evening. Mostly, I just wanted to note that I saw a number of folks with turning in community council, including Kathy, at the hearing on the railroad, question about the lease. And I think in general, the railroad has made some wise moves in terms of making any lease that they might enter into subject to the trail planning. And if the trail goes through, then the lease would take second, it would basically get modified to accommodate the trail and not the other way around. So I thought that was a real positive. Of course, they haven't made a decision yet, and that'll get decided by the full railroad board on the 14th. But I thought in terms of our community, that was real positive. And so that's the main thing I just wanted to note. I know there's, as always, lots of development stuff going on at the airport. My staff and I went out. There's a disposal site for PFAS soil they're finding some on the south side with the construction. And so they actually built a site where they can temporarily deposit PFAS soil that's on the road out to Clitheroe and then on the north side of the airport. And they've done a pretty good construction job on that, and they certainly haven't come close to filling capacity for that site yet. So that's part of the ongoing airport development that goes on, and certainly how to deal with PFAS it's an ongoing challenge because you can put it in a temporary site, but we don't have any permanent disposal sites planned at this point. So there'll be challenges ahead. But those are just 2 things I wanted to report on, and happy to answer any questions folks have.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Matt? Jonathan, Galen.
Thank you, Kathy. Hello, Matt.
Hi, Jonathan.
I'm just wondering, I'm sure you're following this major issue up near Fairbanks and Tok on these giant double ore trucks and the problems with the road and the destruction of the road as a result of this whole mining situation for the gold ore. And I'm wondering how you're following that and your position on that, because it's a particularly dangerous situation, I think, and the road's not built for that. And the bridges certainly aren't really set up for this after all the years of this infrastructure that's needs to be replaced.
Thanks for that question, Jonathan. I share your concerns about that topic, because the roads, as you know correctly, are designed for a certain carat weight level, which is why we don't see it so much in Alaska. But there, in the old days, we had all kinds of scales to make sure trucks weren't overweight, because the consequence of overweight trucks is that roads deteriorate much more rapidly. And so I'm certainly aware of it. I know there's been a number of questions asked to DOT. So we're following up on it and watching the issue. At this point, I'm not sure there's any immediate action the legislature needs to take, but we're certainly aware of it and share the concerns that you raise.
Okay, well, yeah, I go up that way once in a while, and I know those roads, and it's I think particularly onerous for the size of those vehicles. It's a serious life, health, safety issue, and so I think the legislature should get involved in that. I mean, it's fine to have some industry, but this seems way beyond the pale in terms of safety. And I know a lot of the folks in some of those communities, which I am in touch with through various reasons, have great concerns about this.
Yeah. And we've heard from a number of folks in our office with concerns about it. So we're definitely following it, and I'll see what kind of interest we get in the legislature to take more collective action.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Merle, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, yes, I do. Matt, still waiting on a response about the public meetings responsibility for the airport.
Go ahead.
Respond last meeting, and I don't think we've heard anything back about this yet. Did you inquire from the Attorney General if they are exempted from public meetings?
Merle, I have inquired. I called the attorney that does the journey with the Attorney General's office that represents the airport system, and he called back and said before he could talk to me one-on-one, he had to get permission from his supervisor. And I got that message from him early this week. I'd been following up with him a couple of times. I expect to hear from him very soon, and I would certainly expect to hear from him by the next meeting of this council. And once I do hear from him, in addition, Merle, I'll contact you directly.
Okay, well, that's all well and good. You want to remember that if I am right, and I believe that all the paperwork shows that I am right and that they do not have an exemption, the longer they wait, the bigger the lawsuit and the damages that are can accrue to this issue. And so I think it's unfair that we've waited all this length of time. They know the answer, they know what they've got to do, and if they've been exempted, it's either in the legislation or they have a report from the Attorney General as required by statute that they are exempt. So
well, I am following up on it, and I understand your frustration. I've been a little frustrated that I haven't heard. I'd like to hear sooner, but we're working on it.
Well, one more thing, Matt, before you go. Now I'm on record. I following the regulations. I wrote the commissioner back. I can't remember the exact date, but probably the last part of August. No, excuse me. I wrote him in September which was, yeah, August, that's right. I wrote him in August. And so he had to the end of September to respond. That's under the notice provisions of the Public Meetings Act. They're allowed to have 30 days. They did not respond at all. So not responding at all means that the only thing open here is to go to a lawsuit. So
Okay.
that's the state spending the money. Okay, thanks.
Well, as I say, as soon as I get an answer, I'll let you know.
Yeah, and Matt, if you could let the council know as well. Certainly something that we know, Merle, a longtime member of our council, has been following for, quite some time. And so it would be interesting for all of us to, hear what's going on.
Yep,
So
I agree. I was surprised that they had to go to the next level up to get permission to talk to a legislator who also happens to be a lawyer, but that's sometimes I just can't control those things. So
the other point, of course, is that they have been notified and they had to, they should have responded to you, but they do have a problem, Matt, as you well realize, that that Campbell responded to you and gave you the stock answer that those meetings are not meetings open to the public because there are meetings with the consortium airlines. But
Yeah.
you want to remember one thing, that in their last meeting with the concessionary airlines, they agreed to allow, they let them have access, the airlines have a say over how the international Lakewood seaplane base and the Lakewood facilities are being run and whether or not they get financing. So it's a real problem, and I've tried to wake up the county council about it, but everybody's asleep there as far as I can tell. Thanks, Matt. Goodbye.
okay, thanks, Merle.
okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Anybody else have any questions or comments for Matt? I just might say that I did attend that yesterday's meeting via Zoom with regard to the Alaska Railroad real estate. Is it yesterday or the day before? I don't know. I lose track of time. Yesterday.
It was yesterday. I saw you there.
So anyway, so it was the real estate committee who met and they accepted testimony. So I did provide brief comments with regard to TCC's position and the resolution that we have submitted and approved literally, I think it was a year ago tomorrow. And our support is conditional, and we'll hope to talk more about that during Noah King and Taylor Hegan's agenda item with regard to the Fish Creek Trail Connection project. We want updates on that. But this modified lease for the McCarrys, the provision is they'll, they could approve that lease, but if the trail is a go, if everything falls into place in terms of funding and any other issues that need to be addressed, then they could partially withdraw that lease from the McCarry family so that the trail could go ahead and move forward with construction throughout through part of that same area that the McCarrys wanted a lease for. So the only thing that they're still waiting on before it goes for final approval to the railroad board on November 14th is they still haven't had the land fully appraised. They don't have a final appraisal report yet on that land. So that's just kind of an update of what happened yesterday. Okay, anything else for Matt? If not, many thanks, Matt. We appreciate your attendance and all of the work that you do. And we will move on then to mayor's report. If there's anybody here representing the mayor. I don't see any hand raised. It's just something we put on every agenda just in case a representative is here, but I don't see anybody, so no report. And school board report is Dave Donnelly. Has he joined us by chance? I don't think I see him. So it looks like no school board report. I did, when I sent out the agenda, there was an attachment that, from, oh, excuse me. Who's speaking? I'm not sure who's speaking, trying to speak, but you're garbled, whoever it is. Whoever it is.
Kathy,
Sorry.
Kathy, I think it's feedback. John. since you-
Well, I think we'll just hopefully. Is that me making those noises?
I just muted John Johansson. Sorry, John, because the feedback started happening when you unmuted. So I just muted you. Sorry.
Okay, and it's unlikely that John Johansson had a school board report, but I don't know. But anyway, there was an attachment from Margot Bellamy, the chair of the school board, and she kind of does October, mid-October, or mid-month to mid-month. So that's why it's her October newsletter. So that always has a lot of information she provides if you're interested as well. Okay, so let's go on to airport report. Now, John, if you would like to unmute yourself and provide the airport.
Okay, thanks for having me. Hoping that my sound working okay. I was getting
John, you're really garbled.
Kathy, mute yourself and see if that clears him up.
Okay.
I know. To work.
Try it again, John.
I'm hoping getting through now. Am I?
You're still garbled.
How about now?
Good. Try again, John.
Okay. That works?
That's
Yep.
okay.
All right, let's go with that. Sorry about that. So Kathy has a airport update posted on your website. I'll be real quick going through this. In fact, some of them I'm not even going to touch on, but the parking garage, we're having some difficulties. This update says the 10th, that isn't going to happen.
John, you're garbling again.
Yeah.
Sorry.
John, Stephanie Quinn Davidson suggested that you maybe try shutting your.
By shutting what?
Try shutting off your video.
Okay, how's that? Is that any better?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I don't know why.
You didn't have enough bandwidth.
Yeah, I've done it here before, so don't know what the deal is, but okay, maybe that's what the problem is. All right, starting over again. Airport parking garage. Level 1 is not yet open. Our update says it's going to be open the 10th. Unfortunately, we got news today. It's not going to be open the 10th. So sometime this month, we hope the entire parking garage will be open. But until then, levels 2, 3, and 4 are open. And once we get level 1 back, we'll be fully open for the winter. And then in the spring, we'll shut down level 4 and rehab the roof membrane on level 4. And then we'll be all done probably mid-June. Just kind of a request on snow removal on parking lots. that you pay a lot of attention to areas that are designated for not parking over the winter, because we reserve some spots for snow storage in the parking lots. It's very difficult to have places to put snow temporarily until we can move it totally out of the parking lot. So please pay attention and don't park in areas that are designated no parking, to give us a hand there. We have some new passenger flight announcements for next summer season. These are seasonal only. Alaska Airlines is going to be doing daily flights to JFK. And they're also going to do one flight to San Diego. So those will be seasonal, summer only, but the one to JFK is certainly exciting. And Delta has announced a new flight from Anchorage to Detroit that will operate weekend service seasonally for 2024. So 3 new dedicated routes for summer seasonal service next year. We are having a meeting will be in the airfield maintenance facility at 5740 de Havilland Avenue. If you have any agenda items, there's a email contact here that you could send them to if you would like us to address something during that meeting. But again, that is Wednesday, November 15th at 1 p.m. And see what else we have here. I guess I'll get into the cargo developments. There's nothing really that has changed there. Northlink, the development on south in South Air Park near Raspberry Road, they are shut down for the year. All they really did was some clearing and putting in partially complete access road. Nothing new on the FedEx Alaska area cargo facility development. I think the public comment period was closed for that environmental assessment just recently. Similarly with Alaska Cargo and Cold Storage, the planned development south of FedEx, that one, the EA public comment period is closed, and I see that TCC has submitted public comments on both of those developments, so that's good. And nothing new on the TCC development or the development east of the strip near the south end from our previous thing. We're just waiting for both of those developers to get back to us with for the TCC hangar development. They're getting back to us with some revised plans for that development, and the hangar development is we're waiting for them to sign a lease for the property east of Lake Hood Strip, and that is not happening at the moment, so I'm not sure what's holding that up. And then we're still expecting an EA to come out on the relocation of the tie downs that are being displaced by the air traffic control tower. We're expecting that in the December-January timeframe, a draft EA, and there will be a public meeting on that. Then the only other thing I have is the master plan. No meetings on that until January. The consultant right now is just working on putting together alternatives for development to meet the for demand. And that is all I have. So happy to entertain any questions or comments you may have.
Thank you, John. Steve, I see you've got your hand raised.
I do. And John, you know, with this substantial development with Amazon and I guess 100 and some vehicles, I just didn't know whether Amazon was going to be an addition to the airport parking or not. I don't know if you had any ideas about that.
Are you speaking, well, Well, frankly, I'm not familiar with an Amazon development on airport. Are you referring to an Amazon development on airport or
Or Amazon,
someplace else?
I was just thinking Amazon being increased amount of flights or parking. And my understanding, it's going to be quite a substantial dropping off of packaging and taken to that old Sears warehouse. So I just didn't know if that Amazon has their own planes that bring that up and do a lot.
Amazon has contracted with some airline to fly shipments to Anchorage. I'm not sure of the frequency of them, but they offload the cargo in South Air Park, and how they distribute it, I am not clear. Whether they'll be taking it to a new facility in Anchorage, I don't know. They're pretty hush hush on their plans, and I'm certainly not privy to them myself.
Oh, okay. All right.
But they are currently operating flights in and out of Anchorage, and they have been for a couple, 3 years now.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, and of course, we probably all have heard Amazon's took the old Sears warehouse there off Old Seward Highway, I think, and I haven't been down there for quite a while, but they're completely enlarging and moving into that facility. So I guess there would be potentially a lot of traffic between the airport offloading cargo packaging and then trucking it over there to Old Seward location. But I don't know anything. I don't know anything definitive.
Yeah, I've heard rumors, but all I've heard is rumors. But I've not heard any announcement of increase in frequency of flights, which would indicate more cargo being moved off airport. But that doesn't mean it's not happening.
Yeah. Okay. Merle, you've got your hand raised?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Am I still there? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. My deal shows funny. I got three things, John. One is on the tower, that new tower. What you mentioned that a little bit. I want to know, was the funding approved for? Was the use of state funds approved for that?
No.
So the state did not put up any matching funds for this project, including the movement of the creating a new parking area. Is that correct?
No. No.
All right. The next thing is the controller for the airports, as I understand it, is going to starting a study on the rates for the airport, and it was going to be, I thought, started in January, but now I see that they decided to raise the rates for the tie-down holders. What do you know about that? Anything?
Actually, I don't, Merle. I'm sorry. I should know, but I haven't heard anything on that at all.
Okay. The next thing I actually want to ask about, when you talk about these spots for these new leases on the airport, were those in the master plan? And were those items brought to the consortium airlines in one of their meetings to approve?
No. If you're talking about are you talking about the private developments like the one on the east side of Lake Hood Strip?
Yes.
Planned there?
Yes.
No, the airlines don't approve leases to, well, frankly, to anybody that I can think of right off the top of my head. They don't approve, or they don't have any say in who we lease land to, in the terms and conditions of that.
Well, there's something wrong with that statement, John, in that we know that any funding that's going to go to accommodate these leases, such as the utilities, et cetera, that all is going to require funding. And where's that funding coming from?
The developer is funding that.
Well, now, the developer can't
The
fund.
developer is paying for the developer who potentially has a lease on the parcel, which they haven't yet signed, southeast of the Lake Hood Strip. They're responsible for putting in utilities and access.
To their
The
property.
TLC who's proposing to develop T hangars is doing similarly.
All right, but if they're going to bring in, say, a sewer and water line from 1,000 feet from their property lines, who's paying for that?
We have no agreement with either of those two developments on paying for utilities to the developments.
Well, how's the utilities going to get paid for?
The developer is responsible for providing his utilities and access.
Now,
whether or not AWWU or Chugach will, for some reason, share in those costs, I don't know, but the airport is not.
So just to make end this, John, is it your contention that the consortium airlines at their meetings with the airport they were not briefed on this issue, and they did not make any action whatsoever on this issue? Is that correct or not?
Well, I can't for sure say they weren't told that there was a development over there and some communication, but they have no say over our land leases. They don't approve them.
No,
if you're talking about the signatory airlines that are signatory to the operating agreement, the 30-some airlines, they have no say in those developments.
Well,
and they don't approve
they
funding
don't have
for
any
them.
say about who you lease it to, but they do have the say on whether or not state funds or federal funds are spent on Lake Hood. That's in that agreement.
Yes, they do.
Incidentally.
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Yes, they do.
Did they approve it? Then the question is, did they authorize these expenditures? That's what I'm getting at, John. And I think I've made the point, and
Merle, I don't know what expenditures you're talking about. Expenditures required for those developments are being paid for by the developer.
Well, he'll need a taxiway and he'll need some other stuff. So I don't know how that works on that.
Okay,
Okay.
Yeah. John, maybe you could provide something in writing, just a summary or just a little bit of a white paper on the signatory airlines and what their responsibility.
Well, I can tell you right now, they have no say over private developments. They have say over capital projects that we do on the airport, but we don't put capital funds in private developments.
Merle, the private development is like when you develop a subdivision, it's up to the subdivision developer to cover those costs. And that's what John is referring to. It's just like if somebody's developing a subdivision.
Thanks, Pat.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, we heard enough of that.
We need to move on. So if there's anything else, do you want to wrap up, John?
I'd just like to say, Miller, if you want to give me a call and talk to me about it, I'm happy to discuss it.
This is Pat, Kathy. I have my hand up.
Oh, sorry, Pat. Yes, go ahead.
That's all right. I just wanted to comment on the Amazon question. The new Amazon facility is as you know, is at the corner of Old Seward and Dowling Road. Their access should be from Minnesota to Dowling, and they'll offload at the Dowling facility. The entrances are designed so that they come in off of Dowling and go back out on, I think it's onto Old Seward, and then they come back around, so they never have to go to they might have to go to International, but they're never going to hit they should never have to hit Northern Lights. That was my first thought. And then the second is for everybody's interest, the building is the whole facility is completely electric. There is no gas at that facility whatsoever. And the idea being it's supposed to reduce their carbon footprint, but they forget that our electricity is produced by gas turbines. We don't have that much hydro, and we don't have that much wind. But I just thought it'd be interesting that people know that entire facility is completely electric. There is no gas in the building whatsoever.
And Pat, does that mean all the vehicles for delivery are electric as well?
Not that part I haven't is not. No, they're not electric yet, but they have installed and some connections so that when they get electric vehicles, they'll be able to do some charging. My grandson was in charge of the electrical project there. That's the only reason I know this.
Okay, well, thank you, Pat. That was interesting information. Okay, we need to move on. Thank you so much, John, for your airport report. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And so now we're moving into old and new business. So the first item under that category is the 2024 TCC officer and board elections. And these terms are calendar year 2024, so they would start January 1. As you can see on the agenda, there's president, vice president, secretary, and 2 at-large board member positions that will be up for elections. So normally we do this kind of by private ballot and so forth, that we used to do it when we met in person, but we're just going to be having hand votes this evening for each of the titles there. And John and I took on being the nomination committee duties at our meeting last month. And so what we have to present is myself running for president, Karen Pletnikoff running for vice president. We did not come up with anybody for secretary or treasurer. And then the at-large board members, John Isaac said he could step in if need be, but he'd prefer that other candidates step forward. And so Steve Montooth was a maybe as of yesterday. And I know that John Isaacs, you can go ahead and I believe Lamar is interested perhaps in an at-large.
Yes, I was going to say that I did talk to Lamar, and I've worked with Lamar for a long time. He's had a lot of experience as a planner, as a city manager, and at least when I talked to him earlier today, he was open to potentially putting his name in for an at-large board member. I don't want to commit him to it, but if he's still interested, I would certainly highly recommend him.
I'm still interested. How's that?
Good.
Sounds good. So what we need to do, and I'm going to perhaps hand this over to Pat Redmond, since she is our election extraordinaire, of perhaps handling this this agenda item for us, if you wouldn't mind, Pat.
Great.
Come on, dust yourself off and step right into the role that you're so good at.
Okay. Okay, well, first question would be, are there any additional, it's open for nominations for president. And I see that Kathy is listed. Is there anyone else who we either would like to run or that somebody would like to nominate to run for president? In that case, all those in favor of Kathy Gleason for president should indicate by raising your hand, and I would prefer if you do it on the your screen where you can do it like there.
Click
And
on
then we-
reactions and
Then we
then.
then we can look at we can look at it. So
Oh,
6,
yeah, what the hell happened?
12, 13.
8. I have 8 on the screen. I don't know what, and then who else got, 8, 9, 10. Okay. And I heard somebody say they have got counted 13.
Yeah, Lamar, can you keep your hand raised so that we're not confused there? So 1, 2, 3,
Okay.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I've got 16. Am I
Okay.
missing one?
And at that point, I think that's the majority of the, is there any, well, no, that's the, since nobody else is running, that would be Kathy for president. And then the second, oh, gotta bring up my screen. So, and Karen Klinkoff, I see that she's on here where I saw her just a minute ago. If she would like to say a comment so people know who she is. I saw you there. Turn your,
I'm here, Pat.
There you are.
I'm Karen Pletnikoff. I've lived in my home currently since 2013 and lived in the neighborhood for a number of years before then. I work for my regional Native nonprofit in environmental. I've got some amount of environmental advocacy and community infrastructure background, and I'm interested in our parks and roads and land use planning primarily. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations for vice president? Does anyone else just dying to be vice president? Seeing none. All those in favor of Karen to be vice president, please indicate by raising your hand.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Let's see. Some people just moved around. I think there's 60. Steve Montooth, are you voting or not?
I'm not voting right now, no.
Okay. So I think I got 16, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I've got 16. Does that sound correct?
Looks good. Looks good to me. Thank you. I'm gonna flow in my hand. And then we do need a secretary. Are there any nominations? Anyone who would like to step forward to be secretary? It's not that bad a job. It can be done.
Sorry.
And does anybody like to nominate anybody to be secretary? If you, Karen, did you have a nomination? No, okay. Anyone to nominate anyone for secretary? You know, we went this entire season without an official secretary. We really need to have somebody who will be responsible for taking the notes at our meetings. And it would be helpful if, and it would be nice if it's somebody maybe who's new to be active in community council. Some of you have been with community council for a long time, but have not been active with us. And some of you are new, and this would help you to learn more about community councils. I'm not seeing any waving hands here. Okay, so we'll move on to treasurer. This treasurer's job is even easier than the secretary's because there's not much money going in and out. You just need to keep track of what we have in the bank, and if we ever have a fundraiser, to keep track of that. So is there anyone who's willing to step in and take on the position of treasurer? Come on, you guys, you got to be better than that. I can't see it.
Carolyn, would you be willing to run again? You know that there's just nothing there as far as duties.
You're talking
So
to Carolyn Hall?
Yeah, sorry, Carolyn Hall. That way we could actually get our signatures on the signatory cards and everything.
But we don't, okay, if there's no nominations at this
I
time.
don't- Okay.
Say that again.
Carolyn's, mute.
I know she's mute. I see that. Okay, moving on, let's see, John Isaac, did you want to nominate somebody new for the position of at-large board member?
Yes, I would like to withdraw my name and nominate Lamar Cotton.
And Lamar, would you like to say something so we know which one you are? I see you there, but.
And you're mute.
Yeah, you're muted. You're still mute. There you go.
There we go. Sorry about that. Did you want me to say something else?
Yeah. We didn't get to hear any of what you said.
Oh, well, if the question is about what I do or where I've been or something, is that what the?
Right.
Okay, sounds great. I've lived in the GAB and MOA for 60 years, and prior to that, I lived in Palmer. But I've worked primarily over the years in the Aleutians as a city and borough manager. Been on the Anchorage Planning Commission, and I've served 2 terms on the Local Boundary Commission, the State Local Boundary Commission. I was chair last time I was there. So I'm very interested in local government. I think I enjoy the work and even though it can be trying at times, but I think it's where a lot of good work is done. So that's why I'd like to be a board member. So
thank you. All those, are there any other nominations for the first at-large position? All those in favor of Lamar Cotton for at-large board member?
One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11,
do I vote for myself? I don't think so.
15, 12, 16. Lamar, you can vote.
Kathy and
for
I did.
yourself. Okay.
Just one.
I think that would make it 18, but let's call it 17.
There we go.
Thank you. You are now elected. And then the last at-large board member was Steve Montooth.
Yeah, I won't, due to family health issues, I'm not going to be able to do this. In the future, I certainly have interest.
Okay, thank you. So you're withdrawing your name. Jean Belosky, would you consider being an at-large board member again? You've got you're muted there.
Yeah, I haven't ever done it. If you really need me to be an officer, I would do treasurer instead. I just don't have the time outside of my work schedule to do the board meetings and the regular meetings. And also my work schedule is very early in the morning, so I have trouble with evening gatherings.
But you said you would be interested in you would consider treasurer?
Can you hear?
I'll reopen the nominations for treasurer and I nominate Jean for treasurer. All those in favor of Jean?
Could I say something? Could I say something, please? Jean, thank you so much for your interest in the treasurer, but we would really, I know as, current president and now a president-elect for next year, it's really important for the board to be an active board. And, Jean, if you don't think you can even attend board meetings, that probably would, become an issue as far as, your full ability to serve on a board, and the treasurer's duties are pretty minimal. That's the good news. But that's, if you want to go ahead and run and you're elected, then that's, but I just a more active role would be appreciated by whomever would take on any kind of board slot.
Oh, I appreciate that very much. I forgot, as a treasurer, I would have to do the board meetings. So you're right, Kathy. I would be not 100% support. I've got a few more years before I retire, and then, you know, I'll have at it. But until then, I'm just not really available.
I have a question. I see Kathleen's on. Kathleen Pulaski, are you interested in the at-large member or the treasurer's position? You're muted there.
No, I've been dealing with some health issues over the past year, and I'm also still working 2 jobs. So,
Okay.
I'm just not available.
And,
All right.
and Pat,
Thank you.
if no one else is interested, I'll put in for the at-large board member.
You Jonathan will? Okay,
John,
then
if no one else is interested, I'll put in.
is
For at-large.
any I don't see anybody screaming to get does anybody see any more people with their hands raised that need to? I don't see any other options. So Jonathan Isaacs is nominated for the other at-large board member. All those in favor, raise your hand.
Okay. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Stephanie, were you raising somebody's hand there? Hi. Okay, let me count again here. I've got 18.
So okay. So 18 for Jonathan. All right, that completes our election. At this time, we still do have some open positions. So think about it, or think about it if you have a neighbor or someone who hasn't been at community council, but maybe this would be a good way to get them involved. Talk to them, invite them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pat. I appreciate you taking over on that agenda item. Pat, who's been a wonderful past president and kind of at the beginning of the community councils and how they got created in Anchorage. So you're invaluable, Pat.
Yeah, past president, past one of everything, I think.
Well, probably.
More than once.
Over, right?
Yes. Thank you all. Let's continue the meeting, please.
Okay, so next on the agenda is an update to the Fish Creek Trail Connection Project, and Noah King from DOT and Taylor Keegan from the Anchorage Parks Department, both project managers for this trail, are joining us. So thank you so much. And Pat, if you could remove your raised hand, that would be good.
All right, I'm going to try to share my screen here real quick, if that's all right.
Yes, please.
Let me know if that works.
That looks like it's working to me, Noah.
Excellent, thank you very much. So, like Kathy said, my name is Noah King. I'm a project manager with DOT, and together with Taylor Keegan, the MOA Parks and Recreation project manager, we're working on developing the AMAT's Fish Creek Trail Connection project. The goal of the project, it's an AMAT sponsored project, but the goal is to develop a non-motorized transportation facility between the Northern Lights pedestrian bridge and the coastal trail, following roughly the alignment of Fish Creek. So I'm going to give a quick update of our progress over the last year, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. The major recent development, as you can see here, is the selection of a preferred route, which we'll be using to complete the environmental document. The preferred route is posted to our website, fishcreektrail.com, and the route was selected because it does a pretty good job of minimizing environmental impacts while being cost-effective, constructible, safe, and accessible. The route takes off from the pedestrian bridge here at Northern Lights, like I said, and then follows the railroad alignment to the north. It's this highlighted route, multicolored, until it reaches the basically the coastal trail, and then does a little switchback to get down from the embankment to the elevation of the coastal trail. This route does not enter the Fish Creek Estuary Conservation Easement area at any point, so it minimizes the impacts to the environment and wetlands, and provides a route that can be paved and accessible and good for all transportation and recreation uses. We're currently working towards the completion of the environmental document. Surveying and geotechnical investigations were completed this summer, and we are working on getting a cultural resource survey completed, hopefully before it snows. That's our current goal. We're also setting up informal consultations with the National Marine Fisheries Service, as we're going to likely need to realign a small portion of the coastal trail here at the north end into the tidelands. And we want to try to minimize any impact to marine mammals with that modification. But that modification would be necessary in order to, well, likely necessary. We haven't got the full design done yet, but necessary to make a safe connection, safe intersection with good sight distance and accessible grades going down that rather steep slope. So with the completion of the environmental document, which we hope to be done late this year or early next year, we'll start on the final design process when we can start trying to find engineering solutions to the topographic and major utility issues of this selected route. We're currently expecting construction to start in 2025, late in 2025, if everything progresses as we're seeing it now. So I believe the next opportunity to meet the project team will be at the Anchorage Transportation Fair sometime this winter. I don't believe it's been scheduled exactly yet. I think it was in January last year. But if you go to the Fish Creek Trail website, you can sign up for the mailing list, and we'll send out an update when that is scheduled. We're also always available to receive comments and answer questions through the website. But right now, I could answer any questions that you might have relative to any of the progress that we've made. I see Ted has a question.
Yeah, hi Noah. Just curious, what does the the route that's impacting the Resolution Drive residents, what is that going to look like?
So this is the route selected here, or the area that we're shooting for, is to optimize the the alignment in between the railroad, staying far enough away from that, not impacting the fuel line excessively, and also staying as far away from the fences at the back of those properties as possible. So it's not the route on the top of the bluff that would take out all of the fences, but it's also not a route at the bottom of the slope, as there's no room that close to the railroad. So it is a compromise between those two, and very similar to the cross sections that we showed at the open house last year for, I think it's S2. Those are still on the website too, if you'd like to look at them again.
Okay, so residential fences would be impacted or would not be?
I would imagine that the fences would be impacted, but not to the extent that they would be if the trail was at the top of the slope. But we again, we have not started our actual final design, so these are all conceptual impacts, and we will work on minimizing that as much as possible with retaining walls and whatever we can do around the Marathon fuel pipeline.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ted. John.
Great, thanks for coming and making the presentation. I had, I think, 3 questions.
Sure.
Your drawing shows that there's going to be sort of a new driveway, perhaps alignment or realignment. I'm assuming that's with the McCary property at the north end. Is that correct?
There will be, are you referring to this area?
Yes.
This will be a connection, a switchback connection from the embankment near Mr. McCary's driveway down to the coastal trail. The trail will have to cross Mr. McCary's driveway at some point in this area, but we do not know exactly what that looks like at this point.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. The second is your environmental document. Are you still planning on going with a categorical exclusion and probably not an environmental assessment?
We are still planning on going with a categorical exclusion, especially now that we are avoiding the estuary conservation easement area so much. There's very little 4F property involved, only at the coastal trail now. So yes, it's going to be a CE at this point.
And so will that CE be open for draft comment before it's finalized, or will it be issued as a final CE without comment?
It will be issued, I believe, as a final CE without comment, but I can check on that for you.
Okay. And then the last question I have is, are you going to be responding formally to all the comments you received in your public comment phase?
I believe all the comments were responded to at this point, but in the CE, there will be a public involvement summary that has all the comments and responses as well.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That would be good just to see how those were.
You'll be able to see, yeah, how everyone else commented and the responses to that. Yep.
Okay, well, I think that's the questions I have for now. Thanks.
Thanks, John.
I'd also just like to clarify, John, the driveway comment, that crossing the driveway, it's actually an AWU access road. AWU currently has the permit for the railroad, so we'll be in the railroad right of way or on railroad property. So I'd just like to clarify that. We won't be going on JL McCary's private property at any point.
No, great.
No,
I appreciate that. That's a great clarification. Thank you.
Great. Yeah.
Let's see.
I think Steve has a question. I think you're muted, Steve.
So I didn't quite catch that. Did you say cultural resource survey?
Yes, it's part of our environmental document process.
Oh, can you describe that just a little bit more for me?
So we have an archaeologist that is part of the consultant project development team that will be walking the area and looking for any cultural sites or any, they do a architectural investigation as well for old structures in the area, and then looks for any, yeah, I don't know, house pits or culturally modified trees, anything like that, to make sure that we're not disturbing it.
If you find something like that, then what happens next?
So if they find something in the investigation, there's a coordination with the Office of History and Archaeology, the state office, and they work on a report and a plan for mitigation. We see if we can design around it or if it needs to be excavated and cataloged by archaeologists. So hopefully we'd be able to design around anything like that.
Okay, do you have, sorry, does anybody else have their hand raised? Go
Karen
ahead,
does.
Karen.
Oh, no, go ahead and follow up if you'd like. I'm patient.
Well, I was just wondering, this is the first time that I recall, although my brain has been pretty full this year, so I apologize if I just don't remember and you've mentioned it in the past, that you will have to modify a section of the coastal trail and move it, and I don't see any detail of that in the visual that you're showing now. Do you have a much more detailed visual of that effort?
We don't have a graphic for that right now, but we'll try to get one as soon as we can. We don't know that we'll need to realign the coastal trail. We're just planning for the most impactful situation. So they recently completed more topographic surveying, which I don't think we've received yet. So we'll need that to determine the actual grade difference and area that we can use to tie in to the coastal trail and see what kind of curves and slopes we can get there. And then if we do need to realign the coastal trail, we'll have to actually design that, and then we can provide a graphic of how that would look. But it would be pretty much, I expect, parallel to its current alignment in a very similar cross section, just a little bit further away from the railroad embankment.
Are you talking about getting rid of a lot of the trees that are right there? I mean, it's hard to know. This is still pretty, non-detailed. Your lines don't really show, a lot. They're pretty thick in the big picture of things. So it's difficult to say, to really get a full grasp of where that would intersect with the coastal trail. So, I mean, what I'm thinking at this point, if this might be something that a meeting with our land use committee where we could follow up and talk about a lot more detail of what you're mentioning here. And maybe you could provide, more detail in terms of visuals or just discussion about some of this.
We can certainly do that at some point. Yeah, we don't have any actual design work at this point. As I mentioned before, we're still working in the environmental document. You're not, with the federal process, not allowed to start final design work until after the document is completed. So you know that you're avoiding all the impacts that you can. So we won't have very detailed information on things like that, where the trees would be removed for a little while. But once we do, I'd be very happy to meet with the Land Use Committee.
Okay, and that environmental document does not go out for comment, but so what is exactly that environmental document called?
It's a categorical exclusion
Well,
through
that's
the
a
NEPA process.
categorical exclusion to the environmental. But you said then the public cannot weigh in on it.
Your public comments will be included in the public involvement summary, but it doesn't go out for a formal comment period, I don't believe.
Well, that's the downside of going with a categorical exclusion. That's why Turnagain Community Council opposed that. And, we'd prefer to see, as this project moves along, a continued effort for the public to weigh in on some of the details of this.
And you're absolutely, we'll have the opportunity to weigh in. We'll continue to engage with you as much as we can. We have, I think, a few more meetings planned. And as we develop the project, we very much appreciate more public comment, but I don't think we would necessarily have more of that with a different environmental document. We just have a lot more cost. So, sorry, Karen?
It sounds like, it looks like a number of the initial concerns were more addressed with this next alignment. Has this been rolled out enough to hear back from some of those original folks who were concerned about by the fences, by the coastal trail, and or will it be talked about at the November 9th AMATS meeting? And I'll have a response. Thanks.
Sure. We have not heard back or gotten any responses about people's concerns with the actual preferred alignment now and how it relates to their previous concerns. But I think for the majority of the comments that we received were mostly concerned that we stay out of the estuary, and that was the main concern, and that we have a good connection at the south end and don't have to go almost a mile around to get on this southern route. So the majority of the concerns, I think, were addressed with it, but we haven't had any formal feedback at this point. And we will be presenting this to AMATS. I don't know which meeting. I don't think it's going to be the November meeting that will present it, but sometime in the near future, we will present it to AMATS and have more opportunities for public comment.
And just a note, Kathy, I hear what you're saying about the categorical exclusion, but just from my personal and professional experience with environmental assessments, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that your comments will be better incorporated or received. I would just note that it so far so good on the alignment work, and let's keep in close contact with DOT at these stages to ensure those concerns are addressed. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Thank you, Karen.
Sarah?
Yeah, I think that's why I think at a land use committee meeting level where we can talk in a lot more detail. When you say you won't go at the top of the bluff of Long Resolution Drive backyards, but you won't stay at the bottom. Again, that's not something that our support for this project is not, we have conditions, and I was hoping to get a little bit more detail on how, if any, are you incorporating any of our conditions? And I'm not seeing it with this kind of vague of a visual.
Kathy,
Sure.
Yeah.
Kathy, sorry, I just want to reiterate what Noah said is we can't proceed with any design details at this stage. So we can't give you that level of detail. Did you have any questions regarding that specific point?
Well, I think, you know, our situation is we want to track as this moves along. And if we have to wait until you've done so much, and there's really no opportunity from our public input before you can show us more detail, it's kind of a catch-22 from a community council perspective.
Got it. Okay. I hear your concerns, and Noah and I will be working with your land use committee when we start with the design phase of the project. As Noah said, we've just collected the survey, so we don't have that information to provide you. And as you know, I've worked with you for many years now. You have my personal cell phone number, I'm pretty sure. I'm not going anywhere. So yeah, we'll work with you on this, and just know that you're being heard. Okay.
Thank you, Taylor. I appreciate that. Thank you so
Yep.
much.
Hey, Kathy, you have some other hands up there.
Oh, well, okay. So Sarah, I see your hand, and then Pat, and then Jonathan.
Yeah, I'll be really quick. It looks like the area that it might intersect in to the coastal trail is what I call the gauntlet, where you have the fence on both sides of it. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. And then just, I don't know if you can even say this, but casually, is the gentleman whose driveway right there, you used his last name, is he in support or is he against it? And maybe you guys can't say it that broadly.
Sure. I could generally say that he is not very supportive of it. Yeah, he is attempting to lease this parcel from the railroad to maintain his privacy, is what he said in the past. So not particularly.
Okay, gotcha.
But yeah, in that area where there is a fence on both sides and there's already a lot of sight distance concerns, we would be removing some of that fence in order to get the best sight distance at that intersection and make it safer. So just a fence on one side and an open fence on the coastal side. So it would hopefully be an improvement.
Okay, just make. Okay, yeah, thank you. The gauntlet.
Thanks, sir. Hey, Pat.
I just comment, I think too that for those who are concerned about making comments, if you follow this along, anytime you can make comments and suggestions to them and just keep a track of it. Actually, you know, I can see where I don't go down there anymore, but the trail hasn't changed that much. And so I used to use the trail daily all the way there from the other side of Westchester Lagoon to over here to Turnagain and back. And so I know that route through there, and mostly for Kathy's interest, mostly on the north side is you're actually almost into the inlet. So there's not that many trees on the north side. Anyway, we'll keep an eye on it and work with the land use committee so that we don't have to spend a lot of time arguing about it.
Sounds good. Thank you, Pat.
Well, we walked that last year, and when you walk along the coastal trail, yeah, you can tell by the graphic where, you know, where it's wooded, but we just need more detail and, you know, work with you guys on that.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll definitely work with you and share the detail when we have it.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Okay, Jonathan.
Hi, Mr. King. Thanks for your presentation, and Taylor as well. And I just wanted to ask, I think, if you could move your graphics down to the start of the trail there. Is that actually start where the bridge, the pedestrian bridge goes across West Northern Lights? Does that come right down from there, the west side?
Yes, it starts right at the curve just beyond that bridge by the Marathon Valve Station, right in that corner. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Anybody else have their hand raised? Let's see if I can spot anybody else. Don't think so. I guess I'll jump in a little bit more. So one of our conditions was that actually that the trail be tunneled under the what you mentioned, that AWW Drive, McCary driveway access. Is that being considered?
We are no longer considering that due to the topography and the constraints with the utilities. It would be prohibitively expensive to construct that sort of tunnel for this this facility. It would also, I don't think it would be extremely long. The tunnel would be very long at a relatively shallow grade to keep it accessible, and it would be a very dark place that might attract activity that we're not necessarily looking for on the trail. So we are no longer considering that.
Yeah, and I'll add in a lot of other parts of our green belts, folks are asking that those tunnels get widened or removed. It's something that as a department we're working to create solutions for. So by not building more of them is in what our department sees as a greater interest. So we're trying to find ways to make people feel really safe on these trails, as well as those other things Noah mentioned, which were avoiding utility conflicts, being lighter with the land, things like that.
Yeah.
I didn't volunteer to be a board member.
Oh.
He just goes,
Jonathan, is that you?
I thought that was Dan in the background of your
Dan, is
computer.
that you? Whoever's kind of get closer to your mic if you've got something to say. I'm not sure who that was. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I know that I did talk to Mr. McCary. Now it's been probably, a couple months ago. One of the concerns he had expressed, besides the whole privacy issue and all that we have heard about, was that at grade crossing. I don't know how much, I don't know if you've thought, to the level of, because you've got an at grade crossing with a road, how you might deal with that as far as signage. Who would have the right of way, the trail user or the road user? I mean, that's getting down to more detail, but I've had a couple of people talk to me about that. So, if you've got a response now, then if somebody broaches that with me again, I could perhaps give them some feedback on that.
Sure, we don't have a specific design for that yet, but there are many tools, signs and geometric tools that we can use to make that a safe crossing and have the right of way be clear. There's many cases where trails cross small roads, or in this case, just an access road that's used by AWU and Mr. McCary mostly. So we definitely can find a way to make that a very safe facility.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of detail that I think as we move forward, we'll want to see.
Yeah, we'll definitely
yeah.
show you that detail when we develop it.
Okay, great. Anybody else have anything right now? If not, we thank you so much. Oh, wait.
Kathy, just
Karen,
before
go
we
ahead.
let them go,
Yes.
my understanding is that this funding is a rare, wonderful opportunity, and that a longer process, that we could run out of time. Is that a correct understanding? Or
this funding is an incredible opportunity for the municipality. It is a great deal for the Parks Department with the match that they provide and get about 90% back in federal funds. So that part is correct. And there is a timeline for these funds, but I think we're in a situation here where if we start a right-of-way phase next year, which we'll probably do, we would have about 20 years to get it done. So it's not in, at least our funding isn't going to go away anytime soon.
great. Thanks so much for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, and I'll also, I mean, it's not fully funded yet. Like it's got to go before the Parks Department, the park bond again next year. And will that be the last time we'll be looking at voter approval for a match, the 9% match, or is it going to go into 2025 as well?
That's a great question, Kathy, and it really depends on what that final number is. Once we get to 95% design, even 65% design will give us some opportunity to project if we'll need to bond again.
Okay. Yeah. So see, Karen, it's not even fully funded yet. So there's no there's no timeline started on funding that hasn't even been, approved by the voters and then matched by the feds yet. So, it should give the community, as you pointed out, some time to really get more information and get more detail as the project team does their work.
I will share a fact, though. Steve Rafuse, the park superintendent, was reviewing CIP lists submitted this year, and he said that every community council in the municipality of Anchorage, except for one, had the Fish Creek Trail Extension Project on their CIP list. So I thought that was kind of incredible and wonderful. So there's a lot of support throughout the community for this project, and that was one example of how it is supported.
That's really amazing to hear. I mean, it is within the Chernigan Community Council boundaries. So, we do have probably a higher standing from that perspective. It's easy for everybody else to say, we want this done. Oh, but it's in your community council. But we as a council would love to collaborate with any other councils, as far as support and dialogue and the whole 9 yards, because this will be widely used by, many more people than just Chernigan people. So
thanks, Kathy, and thanks for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity to chat.
No problem. Okay, if there are any other questions, please stay in touch, because as we can get more detail, let us know when it would be a good time for you guys to meet with our land use committee, if you wouldn't mind, and then we'll get something scheduled when it's a good time for more dialogue and more discussion.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, thank you so much, Noah and Taylor. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is the West Roaming. Is Peter Briggs with us? I haven't looked at the whole list.
I am
Oh,
here.
there
Is
you
my
are, Peter.
is
Okay,
my audio-
welcome, Peter. So,
is my-
the next on our agenda, Peter Briggs is here with Corvus Design to talk about West Romig campus and an old IT building that's being demolished. And I'll just let you go ahead and explain further what the plan is.
And how is my audio?
It's good.
Can you hear me? Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Good evening, everybody. My name is Peter Briggs with Corvus Design. We're a sub-consultant, or we're a consultant working with the Anchorage School District. I believe that Lin Yi Long is also on the call if there are any questions for the school district itself. I'll try to keep things fairly brief. I'm assuming that I can share a screen. Just going to share a quick exhibit. If someone could tell me when they see a sheet up on their screen.
Yep, we got it.
Perfect. So at the corner of Hillcrest Drive and Minnesota, there is a parcel of land that has an existing building on it that in the past at times has been used as an IT building. I'm going to zoom into the photo. Looking at it from the school, you'll see that there's this building on the right that has a bunch of plants on the roof. That building is going away. And then there are also two portables that are to the north of it, and those are also going away. So the purpose of us being here this evening is twofold. One, to let you know that this is happening within your community council. And then the second, the school district recognizes that encouraging positive uses on their campuses after hours is of benefit, have eyes on the site, and it's a community green space and similar. We have a survey, and what I was going to try was to share, for those of you that might have a phone handy enough, if you wanted to do a survey, you could probably snap a picture of this QR code. The survey is just asking people what kind of activities you might like to do on the site. This was also on a postcard that we sent out to a 1,000-foot radius around the perimeter of the campus. So for keeping things relatively quick, it's a heads up. And if anybody has any comments or information right now, or if you can't get the QR code, Kathy, I'm sorry I missed your voicemail until today. I just got back from a trip.
No
I can
problem.
send a link to the survey if that's appropriate for you to email out after this meeting, if appropriate.
I'd be happy to. Yeah.
Perfect. And just to be clear, the intent is green space. Discussion so far has been maybe some fruit trees, student use space, outdoor classroom. Somebody mentioned a sand volleyball court might be nice for the community and for the school. So just different ideas like that can be not hardscape focused, more recreation or landscape focused.
Hey, Peter, could you please put that QR?
I can.
All right.
There we go.
Thank you.
It's the one of the few positive things that came out of the pandemic was everybody learned how to use these at restaurants, I think.
So have you heard any feedback from anybody so far? I mean, like students or, faculty from the West Romig campus?
We had a meeting with admin there. So I think it's the typical gamut of a place to sit, possibly take a class out to. A couple people had some excitement is there's an existing chain link fence around most of that building. So if that was enclosed, it could actually be a good place for fruit trees. It would be free from moose. So there's different opportunities with the site from that agricultural, urban forestry, urban fruit forest perspective. And of course, if something like that happens as well, looking for if there are any TCC members that are part of the Alaska Pioneer fruit growers or anybody that might be interested in it, that kind of local community support would be amazing if anybody does know anybody that is into their fruit trees.
When you first contacted me about this and ideas for what could be, put there, I thought of a place where Turnagain Community Council could meet would be nice, but it looks like you're going in a whole different direction. So never mind.
On any day you can meet out there as long as you're dressed properly.
Right. And we just have to sit on perhaps a volleyball, sand pit or something, but.
It looks like there's a question or a comment from Pat.
Okay.
Yes,
Pat.
my first comment is when you said the volleyball, I thought that'd be perfect, except that the possibility of the balls going over the fence and into the Minnesota, because that's really close to the Minnesota. No matter what you do, it's going to be close to Minnesota.
And what's nice already there's a fair number of spruce trees along that side that are pretty mature.
Right.
And then we try to locate it further away that it would need to be a really excited spiker.
So you're not removing any of the existing landscaping along the road. Is that true?
No. Yeah,
Okay.
none should be removed. Question or comment from Sarah?
Yeah, hi, Peter. We've met before. Since you were here at our meeting, I wanted to give you some props. Peter's company, everybody was who designed the bike racks at Spinard Beach Park with the float plane. And so he designed those, and then we picked up the extra one we installed. So thank you for doing that, and great project.
My pleasure. And again, I'll send an email to you, Kathy, with a link to that survey.
Okay.
So if anybody, as a way for people to provide their comments. Seeing no other comments, I really appreciate your time, and thank you for being involved in your community council, to all of you.
Well, thank you, Peter. We appreciate your work on this. Just keep us updated when you've got a final plan. How about that?
That sounds like a plan. We'll let you know. Thank you so
Okay.
much, everyone. Have a good evening.
You too. Okay. The last item under old and new business is a resolution that was crafted initially by Spinard Community Council. And then when our board saw it, felt like we should probably consider something similar with regard to the recently installed Minnesota Drive median wall barrier that's been put up between Benson and West Northern Lights. So Dan and I attended the Spinard Community Council meeting last night where they had their version of their resolution. It did pass 14-4, requesting that it be removed or modified greatly, and look at other ways to perhaps address pedestrian safety at the intersection, the south intersection between on the east and west side of Minnesota. They're at the south part of West Northern Lights. That's the one leg, and then also at Benson. There's, the south legs of both those intersections don't have crosswalks. And so the condition, the current condition, and even without the fencing, is that people would try and cross mid-block between the two intersections to get from one side of Minnesota to the other, because otherwise you have to go clear up or down to the intersections and make kind of a U-shaped crossing, cross it 3 different times on the road. So anyway, so we have crafted our own version that's very similar to Spenard's for consideration. The board felt like it was something that is appropriate to put before everybody for consideration. And I don't know if you can screen share that, Carolyn. That would probably be the best way to handle that. It's kind of lengthy, but it's really essentially saying that, it's a difficult intersection in terms of safety, but perhaps the what has been called the cheese grate fencing that's been put up there isn't really going to address the problems in a safe way, and in fact may make it more hazardous. And so we would vote to object to the design and the construction. It doesn't meet the vision for the neighborhood, does not solve the pedestrian dangers at Minnesota Drive, Benson, and West Northern Lights intersections, and in fact has the potential to increase the safety hazard by obstructing driver, pedestrian, and bike rider visibility in this area. So then our remedies would be immediately removing the installed fencing, including that dangerous guy wire at the north end, and work with community stakeholders, including Spenard and Turnagain community councils and the public to dialogue and come up with pedestrian improvements that may actually make a difference. And maybe it's a different kind of fencing that's transparent, more aesthetic, perhaps adding 2 crosswalks at Minnesota at both Benson and Northern Lights, and then altering the traffic light signals to allow for safe crossing at those additional intersections. So that's it in a nutshell, and I'll open it up for if anybody wants to move to approve, and then we can start our discussion.
This is Pat. I'll move to approve the resolution as presented.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a second?
I second.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Okay, does anybody want to jump in and start discussion?
Yes.
Okay, Jonathan, is that what you said? Was it Jonathan? Was you said yes?
Yeah, that was me, Kathy.
Okay, go for it.
I don't agree with the resolution as you described it, Kathy. I think it's at this stage makes sense to have this barrier until another solution is found. There's too many people that are jumping over there, and of all sorts. Lots of inebriated people try to cross, and this will stop them. Now, it is a problem. The whole design is a problem as it relates to no crosswalks, but it's a particularly difficult problem because that's a very busy intersection, and you're right. You have to make 3 separate points of access, which I've done on bicycles and walking. But I do not agree with taking the structure down until a solution is found that makes sense. The whole thing was constructed in a wrong way without having some other solutions. But right now, I disagree with the resolution to arbitrarily just take it down, because I think it will make a difference. There's people who are gonna bypass the fence because they can't get over it, so they will go through the intersection where there is no crosswalk on both ends. However, it will minimize some people from trying to cross, and there will be some people that will take the 3-point crosswalks. That's my opinion on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate it. Sarah and then Merle.
Yeah, Jonathan, I was actually kind of thinking the same thing. When I see that we immediately want it removed, we have opportunity to perhaps see how this works without having to spend any money. It's already in place. You know, I believe the article in the news said that they had 10 pedestrian car incursions, or if someone was actually hit. So what if this barrier brings it down to 1 or 2? What if we left it up for a year and just kind of looked at it as a case study? And then after we realize it does work, now we've got a little bit of data and we can go from there to maybe a better solution. So just kind of piggybacking off of Jonathan, which is, you know, maybe we leave it up for a year or enough time to collect some data, and then we go from there.
Well, Anna, or I'm sorry, Sarah, I totally agree with you, but the last point, I'm sorry to cut in front of anyone, but our esteemed assembly member, Anna, who I'm a big fan of, did make some comments recently on her Facebook page, whatever, that this causes a problem and separates neighborhoods. Well, all streets separate neighborhoods. This was constructed for life safety reasons, and I think it will mitigate a certain amount of individuals from going cattywampus across this very dangerous area. So we're in agreement on that. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you again, and thank you, Sarah. And let's see, Merle, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I have a little different take on this. I saw that fence, and my question is, where are you going to put the snow? You're going to have a big problem, I think, there. Turning lanes, particularly on the northbound traffic, we're going to want to come down Benson Boulevard and make a left turn onto Northern Lights. And turning lanes are going to be, that's the only place looks like they're going to be able to leave they're going to plow all their snow into it. And how are they going to get it moved? And the other thing I point out I think it is absolutely ridiculous that whole thing got put up without first being brought before the community council for their approval. Now, I don't know, this community council wouldn't have been the one, would have been in the Spenard community council should have been given the plans for that intersection, and they should have been able to see what was coming up. But remember, we may not have much snow this year yet, but if we get snow, you're going to have a problem there. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, Merle. I appreciate it. And the point that you made with regard to ridiculous that they didn't go before the community council first, that was heavily mentioned at last night's Spenard Community Council meeting. They were very disappointed that there was no public input. There was no, this is what our idea is. What do you guys think? That was a lot of their, reason for opposition, besides the fact that they felt like the design was not really going to accomplish what DOT is hoping to, but that's yet to be seen. So let's see, Merle, if you want to put your hand down, and Karen, you've got your hand up, please.
Yeah. I think another change that was made with the installation of this fence was realigning the two turn lanes from Benson onto Minnesota, heading north, with the inside lane now a much tighter turn, and also a very blind turn because of the fence. And when I was driving it, it didn't feel very safe, and it really felt like there could just be anything on the other side of that turn, a very tight turn now. I agree that protecting pedestrians is really important, but this fence doesn't seem like it's built to protect pedestrians as much as to just make things more difficult. Like it's not, it doesn't feel like it's here to help. It just feels like it's here to be punitive against one way people would cross that area, just forcing them to get closer to where people are blind turning now. And that feels less safe. And especially with, like another pointed out, the exposed skylines at the end there, which many people may not, see until they're already, halfway through their bad decision. So, while I agree that something immediate would be wonderful to do to protect somebody, at the very least, the large concrete is not going anywhere quickly. But the lack of vision, ability to see what's going on, could be mitigated. Thanks.
Okay, let's see, Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, I drive this from work back home, going north on Minnesota and then turning west on West Northern Lights 4 to 5 times a week, because I come from South Anchorage. That's where I work. And when I was, I am concerned I do not get into the excuse me, into the inside turn lane, because that two foot berm that they put in there, it concerns me that somebody's going to hit that and wreck. From a curb standpoint, the fence, it is blind. I can't see until if somebody's crossing from the west to the east, to against the grain and illegally, or not illegally, because jaywalking is not illegal anymore, and that there's going to be an incident on that at that intersection. To me, the solution is that they change the lighting, they put in a crosswalk in that area, and they change the lighting, and they put in a crossing there at certain times for people to cross there, so that they don't have to spend 12 minutes going 3 different ways and then exposing themselves to 3 different crossings where they could possibly get hit versus just the one. And there are places throughout the municipality that have two left-hand turn lanes, and they have crosswalks. So that's not an issue. That's just, and it's an inconvenience for drivers a little bit for the crossings, but we should have pedestrian friendly municipality, and that's what we're trying to do. And this is not pedestrian friendly. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Pat, you've got your hand raised.
Yes, and that was going to probably be my comment too. It seems to me, I'm thinking about the intersection at Spenard Road and Minnesota, and it seems to me they can cross all of there, through there, there's no, so we need to do the same thing at our intersection in Minnesota and West Northern Lights. And that fence is really not the best thing to have there. Matter of fact, it's probably worse than what was there before. As several people have already said, because it creates more blind spots rather than open space. Or anyway, it's not a good thing to have there, period.
Okay, let's see. Does anybody else have their hand up? Anybody else want to comment on this resolution? Does anybody want to make any amendments to the resolution? There was a little bit of chat about that.
Could you please slide up and yeah, that's a little bit further down, just so we could see all the therefore be it, but not your signing part or resolution passed.
Thanks, Carolyn. Yeah, I talked briefly about this at the Spenard Council meeting, just to let them know that we were going to be considering a motion ourselves this evening. And I'm really concerned about the north end of that whole infrastructure when it goes down from a six foot fence to, I don't know, maybe a 4, there for a little bit, it steps down. And then you've got this really angled guide wire to give the fence, stability into like an area that almost invites people to cross there, because it's kind of a brick paver there that just, there's not a real crosswalk there, but it's almost like they expect people to go ahead and cross at that spot just north of the guy wire. And, like Dan and others pointed out, if you're in a turning lane right there, you don't have any visibility of anybody coming across there and trying to cross the road at that point. I think it's really going to be a dangerous situation. Time will tell if nothing is done. And just because we and Spenard are passing resolutions, that doesn't mean anything might, not be done. But I'm not sure what they were thinking when they came up with this design, but I think it could be improved substantially in, by putting further effort and discussion about it into the mix. So that's my 2 cents worth.
So Kathy,
Okay.
Kathy, it seems like the sticking point is whether or not it should be removed immediately. And if you were to come up with a substitution that said that a new solution is needed immediately to replace it, not specifically to remove it right away, but move into a new solution, working with the community councils to replace it immediately, would that be adequate? You keep it in place, but move fast to come up with something else.
Well, I mean, that's the kind of thing where if somebody moves to amend, they are welcome to do so.
So I will move to amend the first bullet under therefore be it resolved to keep the recently installed barrier in place, but work quickly to come up with a better and safer solution. Or perhaps maybe what we do is we take away the first bullet and change the second bullet to say, work with community stakeholders to immediately come up with a safer substitute solution. So I'll throw that out there for public. We'll delete the first bullet and modify the second bullet saying, work with the community councils to come up with a solution to immediately replace the existing fence, something along those lines, and see if people will go along with that.
This is
Okay.
Pat, I'll second its motion.
Thank you. We're just going to ask for a second. Okay. Okay. Does anybody have any discussion on John's amendment to remove completely the first bullet under the second, now therefore be it resolved, and then modify the language in the second one, which we could make sure we tweak it so it makes sense, but essentially, work with the community stakeholders and the community councils.
To immediately find a replacement or immediately replace with something safer.
Maybe use the word urgent in there to just, they won't tear it down immediately because we won't come up with a solution immediately.
Yep.
But
But they can immediately start working at hosting meetings to come up with community input for better solutions. I mean, they could do that.
So immediately initiate
immediately initiate meeting with community stakeholders to come up with a replacement for the existing fence.
Well, John, and ask the traffic engineering to fast track immediately to come up with a design, an alternative design.
By the way, folks, was there
to be discussed with, the community councils?
Okay, so you're suggesting that to ask the traffic engineers to fast track a replacement design and discuss it with the community councils. That's your suggestion, Jonathan. I would consider that a friendly amendment.
Yes.
Okay. And since we don't have a secretary, I'm scribbling down, but I guess I would ask if we go ahead and approve the motion with John and then Jonathan's friendly amendment, that then John and I could work on crafting something that comes close to what we're discussing this evening. Would that be
sure?
Would that be okay with the body?
Yep.
Sure.
So why don't we need to go ahead and vote on the essence of
Kathy, I don't know if Merle wanted to speak to it.
Oh, sorry, because the way when it's screen shared, I forget to look for everybody's hands. Merle, please go ahead.
All right, first of all, I disagree with John where you're going with this. I think you've prepared a document here, which you heard from a number of people that think that there should be more to it, and I think you do better to list the reasons and what was given here by the individuals as to why I think that screening is proper, and I think that's where you should go and send that to whomever you want to the highway department. But to continue to try to work on an amendment to this thing and get everybody's comments back in here one at a time, if you're going to be here a long time tonight. I like I said, I think the process is to drop this, go back to the drawing board and redraw this resolution, bring it up next meeting with everybody's comments addressed in it tonight. Thank you.
Well,
Okay,
that's
thank you,
actually a pretty, that's actually a valid point, Merle. Thank you, John. You're talking a month from now, so it's not going to make much of a difference. But I do think that is a valid point to, make the comments on what we're about to make the comments and change the document, but at the same time, the reasons for changing the resolution do have a lot of merit, I believe. Merle's comments.
Okay, we have a motion to amend and a friendly amendment to that on the floor. Should we go ahead and vote on that, and then we can wrap it up in terms of, and I'm gonna interrupt myself. I'm gonna need a motion. Move to extend for 15 minutes, please.
This is Carolyn. I'll-
moved.
Second,
Oh, Carolyn, is that, Carolyn and Jonathan second?
yes.
Is there any objection? Okay, all right, thank you. So why don't we go ahead and vote on the John's motion that had a friendly amendment from
Jonathan,
Jonathan,
Yeah.
and then if that fails, then we'll, get a restart. So, or if it passes, then we'll move on. So, all in favor of what I just said, please raise your hand. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's see. Now, can somebody help me, please? Because the way I'm doing this isn't. So 1, 2.
well, if you can take down the document,
That would be helpful. Thank you
Yes.
so much. Good suggestion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So 14, yes. And are there any no's? Everybody lower your hand that was a yes. Is there anybody opposed to the amendment to the motion? And so John, are you voting to?
Amen.
And so Merle, you're voting no on this amendment. So that amendment passes.
And Kathy, I would suggest that we can try to work to smooth this out, to take into the comments and concerns that both Jonathan and Merle made. To try to reflect, some of those additional concerns I raised after my motion and Jonathan's initial friendly amendment. That would be my suggestion, that we would
Okay.
do that.
If that's okay with the body, with that caveat, then let's go back
Kathy,
to
how are you gonna do that? You've got your document there and he's supposed to oppose an amendment to it. So now you can only do one thing, and that is you either vote on the document itself now with not knowing what all the wording is going to be. You're going to want us to wait until some other time for you guys to come up with a document which only you and a few people are going to know about. Not the rest of us are going to get to see.
Okay.
Actually,
Yeah, so we're back at the main motion as amended.
I withdraw my comment. Yeah, my last comment. We'll go with what we approved.
Well, I'll have to get specific crafting from you and Jonathan to make sure that that's accurate. My scribbles are, scribbles. So we're back to the main motion as amended. So is there any more discussion, or let's go ahead and vote on
Sarah
it?
has her hand up.
Let's see. And Merle still does, but Merle, I'm gonna go to.
I thought you already voted on it. I thought that you already
that's
voted on
what
the
we
main.
voted on, Kathy.
You
We
voted on the. Excuse
the
me,
motion as
Mrs.
amended.
Redmond. Excuse me, Mrs. Redmond.
No, excuse me,
Mrs. Redmond.
excuse me, Merle, and everyone else. What we voted on was the amendment to the main motion. Now
That's
we have
correct.
to go vote on the main motion as amended. So is there any more discussion, or should we vote on the main motion that was amended by John and Jonathan?
Sarah's got her hand up.
Sarah, please.
Thanks. So I'm still a little torn, and maybe it would help me if we talked a little bit about the urgency. And I apologize if I missed it. I had a friend come pick up their dog while this was all going on. But if we didn't approve it today, could we still move it to talk about it next month and possibly approve it then if we made the edits, and then we could see it again? Or is there a pretty big rush to get this approved today?
I don't see the giant rush for 30 days. To your point, or making a point.
I don't think that there is an imposed urgency. We know that Spenard Community Council has submitted their, because they provided me on who all they submitted their resolution to. And that's already been done as of today, reflecting their action last night. If we as a body feel like we need more time on this, that's our prerogative.
Thank you. I love the idea of letting the state know that they should have gotten the community's involvement. I 100% support that. But it is nice to not present these resolutions when we vote on them in the same meeting. And I know we do that often just because of the way the time works out. But we're usually up against, a deadline, a comment period, an assembly meeting, or a hearing. But if we don't have that, I'd be happy to hear about the pros and cons of piggybacking off of, say, Spenard Community Council and having this go through right away. I honestly am on the fence. I could easily vote yes or no on this. So be interested to hear what other people think.
Okay, Karen, you've got your hand raised.
My personal interest in seeing it go sooner than later would be the potential impact of 2 community councils sending this and doing it before the snow falls, and we hopefully don't see the bad results of this, but maybe some of it could be avoided. So that would be where I would think some urgency is. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Karen. A lot to think about here. So Dan says thumbs up. So we are at the main motion, and
Steve Monson's hand is up.
Steve, sorry, Steve, go ahead. And then I'm gonna ask for
the vote.
Yeah, I was curious about, you went to the meeting yesterday, the community council meeting over there. Was there any asking of any kind of community input regarding this specific?
Yes, and our resolution is very, very similar, not exact, but very similar. And I've got their resolution here. And so let's see. So what part of it should I just read there to therefore be it resolves?
No.
Would you like to hear what Spenard passed? So they had to, it was now therefore be it resolved. The Spenard Community Council rejects the construction of the Minnesota wall fence, which does not meet the vision for the neighborhood and does not address the pedestrian dangers at the Minnesota, Benson, and Northern Lights intersections. And now therefore be it further resolved, the Spenard Community Council requests the following remedies for this project. Remove the center wall structure along Minnesota Drive between Benson and Northern Lights Boulevard ASAP, and work with community stakeholders and the public to design pedestrian improvements to add crosswalks to the missing sections, the 4th legs, at Minnesota Drive at both Benson and Northern Lights Boulevards, and construct the pedestrian improvements ASAP. That's what they passed. So, the modifications I felt like, to ours were a little more specific than theirs, but it certainly reflects the intent of their resolution as well. Stephanie, yes.
Yeah, thanks. I am very, very much in support of this resolution. When I saw that fence go up, I was appalled. But something Sarah just said really resonated with me, which is something I've had a concern with this community council for ever since I've been on the board, which is bringing resolutions before the council and then voting on it in the same meeting and not having an opportunity for people to really digest the resolution and the information. And so I agree with you know, there isn't an urgency here. It would be nice to submit it at the same time as Spadina Community Council. The likelihood that they are actually going to take this down in the next couple of weeks is very minimal. Let's be realistic here. So I actually, I'd like to make a motion to postpone this until our next community council meeting in December.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Point of order, Kathy, don't you already have a motion? You have a motion to do something. You can't have two motions.
Well, move to postpone can come up at any time while you're considering a motion. So this is completely appropriate.
Yeah, because if we were to vote on this and vote it down, it would kill it. It'd be dead. And so I'm voting to extend this and postpone it until next community council.
And did I get a second? I know I heard several voices, so
I
Steve
second.
Montes is seconding that. Okay. I have a question to your motion, Stephanie. Would you want to see it amended or just this same motion come before us again next month?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Well, how about if in the interim, to Stephanie's point, which is what I agreed with, as I mentioned, that the document is changed pursuant to what John and you said, Kathy, and changing the language and then voting, in December on the revised language. So that's, maybe a happy medium.
And I know I should raise my hand, but I just actually you could send out the draft of the resolution prior to the community, not just the week of the community council meeting, but as soon as you get it done so that people have time to consider it over the next couple of weeks.
Right.
I probably will not do that. Just because of that's piecemeal and it's too much. But I think that if we go ahead and amend what we've got now and present, I think that's probably an appropriate way to move forward for our
But
next.
if we don't see it until the community council meeting, that doesn't, again, that there might be things that people would. Anyway, I just think it should come out sooner for at least a review, and people can have it in their minds before the next meeting.
I'll rely on my land use committee co-chair, John.
I think we can and we should get it out sooner. And so
then,
I will try to work. You'll be gone next week. I'll try to work on a draft.
I'll be gone next
try to get
week,
it out a week or two ahead of time.
Okay, thank you, John.
Yep.
Okay, so what we have here is a motion to postpone, and with the caveat it would be a revised version for our December meeting. Let's go ahead and take a vote on Stephanie's motion, please. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I've got 13 yes. And everybody lower your hand so that who's voting no. Are there any no votes? Dan and Stephanie, you probably need to lower your hand. So Dan is a no vote. Anybody else voting? No, so we have one no, and that motion passes. So that's what we will do. And we will move on to thank you, everybody. All good input, very, very much. And trust me, probably the discussion at Spadina lasted at least twice as long as what we did tonight. So we did actually pretty darn good.
Okay, so Kathy, I'm going to try to wrap up land use in 2 minutes so we can adjourn.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, So things have settled down with land use. As far as the airport goes, we've gotten 2 sets of comments on the EAs for FedEx and Alaska Cold Storage. We're going to be waiting to see what happens with the tower relocation, Charlie parking relocation EA coming out. Master plan next meeting is going to be on next January, and I will be attending the Lakewood meeting on the 15th just to see what's going to occur on that. And then we're also tracking to see what's going to happen with the K-lot lease, that if that moves forward, then we're going to try to get more involved with that and perhaps talk to their architects so we can have some influence on what happens with that K-lot development. With regard to the residential district ordinance, I'll be attending the housing summit tomorrow to see what's going on with that. And again, we'll keep an eye on what's happening with the planning commission. But again, I think other than that, we'll also wait to see what happens with Fish Creek, but that kind of covers all the things that I think are on our plate right now with land use, unless I've missed something.
I think you pretty well covered it, John. I do feel like after having Noah and Taylor here this evening and some of the new information that they presented, we definitely want to be following up on that where and when we can, to make sure this is a good project for our neighborhood as well as for the public at large. And so thank you so much, John. And I'll probably have to amend my notes because you talked so fast I didn't get them all, but I think you covered everything. So, okay. If nobody has anything else, oh, we've got hands. Okay, Merle quickly, and then Carolyn. Merle, are you there? You have your hand raised.
Go to Carolyn.
All right, John, you when you're talking about this tower thing, who's preparing whatever you're calling the document?
The
Do
EA,
you know?
the EA is being prepared by FAA. I'm not sure what consultant they're using, but they're the ones that are preparing the EA.
So the consultants are FAA. They are FAA is preparing this. That's the way you understand it?
Correct.
And they're using, where are the funds coming from?
Can't tell you, Merle. It's federal funding. Don't know.
Okay, so when I asked about the funding would have been discussed at the users group meeting that you guys don't want to see the proof, make sure we get into. So anyway, that's my comments on it. And there is going to be that meeting, like John said, for the Lakewood users group on the 15th of November, 1 o'clock in the maintenance room.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I plan to attend that as well. I'll be back in town. So Carolyn.
I move to adjourn.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Pat, second. Any objection? No. Okay, thank you.
Have a
guys
happy
so much.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thanks all.
Everybody will hopefully.
Congratulations
And
to the
yeah,
new board member.
Thank you.
Have a birthday. Have a good
Oh, man.
birthday.
Yeah, have a good birthday, Dan.
Happy birthday.
Good night.
Dan.
Good night, everybody. Thank you again so much for participating.